Chapter 7, Twister. The black clouds had taken on a odd greenish color. They all seemed to be going different directions. Do you think it's a grasshopper attack? Annie asked nervously. No, I think it's some more weird weather, like that hailstorm, said Jack. Let's go before it gets worse. As they started back to the treehouse, the wind picked up. Jack and Annie looked over their shoulders. The greenish clouds had dipped down close to the prairie. I feel like something awful is about to happen, said Annie. Hurry, Jack said. Run. He and Annie started running through the grass. When they got to the ladder of the treehouse, they looked back. In the distance, twisting, black clouds had dropped out of the storm clouds. They were swirling into a funnel shape. The dark funnel started twisting across the prairie. Jack's heart nearly jumped out of his chest. It's a twister, he cried. Oh no, cried Annie. The twister was whirling and tearing across the grass. Let's get out of here, said Jack. He grabbed the rope ladder and started up. Wait, said Annie. We have to help Miss Neely and the other kids. I can tell that Annie is kind and compassionate because she cares enough about the other kids and the teacher to go back to the school. They have a storm shelter, said Jack. That's what our book said. Yeah, but it's only their first day in the dugout. They might not know about it, said Annie. There was a rug on the floor. Annie's right, Jack thought. He looked up at the treehouse. All they had to do was climb up and leave, and they'd be safe. But what about Miss Neely? What about Will and Kate and Jeb? Okay, said Jack. He jumped down from the ladder. Let's go back. He and Annie started running back towards the schoolhouse. They ran as fast as they could across the prairie. The roaring sound of the twister followed them. Suddenly, the wind threw them to the ground. Jack clutched or held on to the grass, trying to stand. When he got up, he grabbed Annie's hand. He pulled her up, too. With all his might, Jack held on to Annie and pulled her along. The roaring twister came closer. The wind ripped up the grass and earth around them. The roar grew deafening. Jack and Annie could barely stay at their feet. Finally, they reached the dugout. They tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. They banged on the door with their fists. Let us in, Annie shouted. No one opened the door. They can't hear us, yelled Jack, but the sound of the twister drowned out his voice. Chapter 8, Get Below. Suddenly, the schoolhouse door blew off its hinges. It went flying through the air. Jack grabbed Annie and pulled her into the dugout. Inside, the benches were overturned. The room was a mess. Miss Neely and the three kids were pressed against the dirt wall. Kate and Will screamed as the winds whipped around the room. Miss Neely hugged Kate. Jeb held onto Will. Get in the cellar, Jack yelled. What cellar? Shouted Miss Neely. Together, Jack and Annie pulled the rug off the floor and uncovered the cellar door. So there they were, against the wall in the classroom, and then Jack and Annie luckily knew about that trap door. They grabbed the door and tried to open it, but the wind was blowing too hard. Suddenly, Jeb was beside them. He pulled the door open. A ladder led down into the cellar. One by one, Will, Kate, Miss Neely, and Annie went down the ladder. Jack waited for Jeb to go down. Go, go, Jeb shouted. Jack climbed down into the cellar. Jeb came last. He closed the door behind him, leaving everyone in total darkness. The twister roared fiercely above them. It sounded like a train barreling right through the schoolhouse. That's what people say, that a tornado sounds like a train as it's coming through. How would you be feeling right now if you were in total darkness underneath the ground and there was a storm like that above you? Yeah, I would be terrified too. As the twister roared and howled, Jack couldn't think. He couldn't feel. He was totally swept up in the howl of the wind. Then, just as Jack felt he would disappear into the roar of the twister, the noise died down, and then it was silent. No one spoke for a moment in the blackness. Then Annie broke the silence. Are we still alive? She whispered. Everyone laughed. Yes, I think we are, said Miss Neely. Twisters or tornadoes are the fastest winds on Earth. Twisters can travel up at speeds of 200 miles per hour. The spinning wind acts like a giant vacuum cleaner as they move across the Earth, so they pick up stuff as they go. Almost 1,000 tornadoes hit the United States each year. Join me next week on Monday as we finish chapter 9 and 10 of Twister on Tuesday. I hope you're enjoying the story so far and have learned some cool facts about life on the prairie in pioneer times and about twisters.